Now it's my pleasure to introduce our main speaker for tonight. And as I mentioned earlier, I heard her back in December, and I was so impressed with her, but also her story, but also extremely concerned about what she has to tell you, that I'm doing everything I can to get her in front of as many people as possible. And we're running a little bit behind time, but I think most of you got the email. You saw her resume. She's a very impressive resume. She's got a doctorate in chemistry. And I think she was an engineer for a semiconductor company. She's kind of a computer whiz, which is really a really good thing, as you're going to see. But we're going to go straight to Laura and let her tell her story. And hopefully there's going to be time for about 5 or 10 minutes worth of questions afterwards. But I hope you're just as concerned as I am once you heard her talking.
All right. Oh my gosh, what a great crowd. Thank you for having me, Mike. Bless you for being such a brave soul to bring up this topic. This is a very difficult topic that we're going to talk about tonight. It's going to be a little bit of a paradigm shift, I think, if you haven't heard this before. First, I love your poll. Who in here trusts electronic voting? Could you raise your hand if you do trust electronic voting? Okay, I see only a few people. It's really amazing. I ran for the Austin City Council back in 2014, and a little bit about my history is I grew up in Mansfield, Texas, which is a little south of Fort Worth, and my dad was a cattle auctioneer at the stockyards. And we had a dairy, and I grew up, I was the oldest I have 2 younger brothers, and my dad raised us to work really hard and to always tell the truth. And as you grow up, if you tell the truth all the time, you're not popular. You're just not. But that's how I was raised. And he always said, never give up. So that kind of set the stage for what the challenge that we've been given in the last year and a half. So I ran for the city council. And as Mike said, I have a PhD in chemistry and kind of chemistry and physics from UT Austin. And I worked in the semiconductor industry, Motorola and Advanced Micro Devices, for about 17 years. And I was an engineer. I was a manager of engineers. I've managed teams in Austin, all across the world, in Asia. I've a lot of stuff I've worked on. And this electronic voting, I never trusted it, and I didn't know why. I just didn't. I just kind of had this feeling that it wasn't going to be something that was traceable. As having a computer background, I have 4 patents in computer technology. So I know a little bit of how computers can be hacked. I've actually had engineers work for me who could hack stuff with their hands tied behind their back. So that's something about, I was always worried about it. I've spent about 28 years in Austin. I've been my neighborhood president. I've been on multiple nonprofits. And I was sick and tired of what the taxes are in Austin, Texas. Austin is very wasteful. Everybody in here knows that. The city is incredibly wasteful. So I ran for city council, and I was slated to win the race. The Democrats moved into my district a 24-year-old to run against me. He lived in Austin about 2 years, only had 1 job before that, and he was an atheist. And we made sure that all the voters knew. The district I live in is the Runberg area in northeast Austin, and it's the highest crime in the city, the absolute highest crime. We have prostitution, we have drug abuse, we have a lot of crime there. And it's a poor district. And I'm going to tell you something, poor people are not atheists. And they're not going to vote for one. And nothing this kid could do was letting him win. Absolutely nothing. All the lies and everything they told. So we had professional polls done across the board. We were in a general election and then a runoff. And all the polls showed me winning. We had electioneers at every single polling location on election night. And we were getting calls, Laura, you got this. You're over 60% high-fiving. You got it. The election results come in, the electronic voting, and he has beat me 2-1. And I didn't believe it. I know I won. And those of you who've been candidates, you know when you win. On election day, my opponent was nowhere to be found. He wasn't at any polling location. He had no signs at any polling location in the runoff. He was a little overconfident. So we knew something was wrong. So that night, I could not believe it. 2-1. Didn't make any sense at all. So I know a little math. I know how to use an Excel spreadsheet. So I got up the next morning and started analyzing data, and what I found made me sick at my stomach. We looked at a bunch of data, and I'm going to show you that. But the first thing I want to do is go through the election laws. How many here have worked on campaigns? Probably almost everybody, yes. You know, we worry about block walking and phone banking and kissing babies, but do we know what the laws are of what the election, how the election results are to be counted, and what the backup records are supposed to be there for the electronic voting machines? I didn't know that. And I'll tell you what, if you're a good candidate, you can get to the 1-yard line in a campaign. What gets you into the end zone, if you're challenging the status quo, is keeping your election from being stolen. So I want you to think about that. Have you known of any candidates or any representatives that don't listen to the voters? That just do what they want in Austin, or do what they want on city council or commissioner's court or whatever? Have you known anybody like that? Any candidates or any reps like that? Maybe they know we don't matter. And this is a difficult subject. So we're going to get started. First thing I want to do is, if anybody has not gotten our handout, we have a 1-page handout. If anybody would like that hasn't gotten it, let me know. Mike, could you help? I have a few left here. It's a big crowd. So we're going to walk through this 1-pager. And the first thing we're going to do is talk about the laws in Texas about voting. As a candidate, I really didn't understand what the laws were. And we're going to walk through that first. Okay. Here in Parker County, you use the Hart InterCivic voting equipment, correct? So have you ever wondered what happens to your vote when you vote? Yeah, so I'm going to walk through what that looks like. So you have your ballot you look at right here. It's got all the boxes, it's got all the candidates' names, and you use the wheel and you pick your candidate that you're voting for. That electronic data goes on to what's called a mobile ballot box. It's a memory card. And this equipment is about 15 years old. Okay? This memory card, you have one per precinct, or one or two per polling location. And where do those cards go? They go down to one place. It's the central count computer. And if you're going to steal an election, you want to be at that main computer. Imagine Houston, 1,000 precincts. Don't worry about going to 1,000 precincts and trying to steal an election in those machines. All you have to do is wait for the cards to come to you on election night in one place. That's the efficient way to do it. And I'm an engineer, and I've managed engineers, and we do things efficiently. So if you're going to steal an election, you want to have access to this card, because that's where the votes are. And you want to have access to that main computer, because that's where it's being counted. Okay, so keep that in mind. All right, let's talk about the laws in Texas. I love the Texas election code. It is very specific. God bless the Texas legislature. They have done a fabulous job at putting Band-Aids around this thing called electronic voting machines. This is a very powerful code right here, Chapter 52. And it says in Texas, the vote in an election is by official ballot. Seems simple, but it's very important. The vote in an election is by official ballot. It's not by just any old piece of paper. They have to be an official ballot. And actually, the Texas Election Code defines what a ballot is. This is amazing. In 2 places, it talks about, in the Constitution of the state and also in the Election Code, you have to have a serial number. You have to have a serial tracking number for every single ballot. You can't vote on any old piece of paper. It has to be tracked. You have to have the name and date of the election on the ballot. You also have to have voting squares. You know how you have to have you see the voting square to the left of the candidate's name? That's because the legislature has defined it that way. That's required by law. And you have to have all the candidates' names. You have to have voting instructions. And this is what a ballot looks like in Travis County. In my election, I knew the results were wrong, And so we did, the first thing that candidates do is ask for a recount. That's an interesting thing with an electronic voting machine. There's two ways to do a recount on electronic voting. You can run the same program over again. That seems kind of silly, seem to do it that way. But the Texas Code allows a different way, which is you can manually count what's called ballot images. What's a ballot? Serial number, boxes, name and date of the election, all the candidates' names. That's what a ballot is. That's what the law says. You can actually count ballot images. Well, you also recount the paper ballots, which are the absentee ballots. So we did that, and that's what this looks like right here. Can we move it down just a hair? I want to show the top. And heavens to Betsy, this thing looks like a ballot. This is the paper ballot, the absentee mail-in ballot. It's got a serial number, boxes, the name and date of the election, and all the candidates' names, and there's my name and my opponent. That's a ballot. When we counted those paper ballots, it was interesting. It was exactly 50-50 tie. It wasn't 2-1. The paper ballots were exactly a tie. The 2-1 came into play with the electronic ballots. And what the county told us, Ms. Pressley, we can't give you a ballot image, even though that's what we're supposed to give you in the code. We're going to give you a cast vote record, and I'm going to show you what that is. No electronic voting machine in the state of Texas can produce a legal ballot image. Did y'all know that? Candidates have known it, who've tried to do recounts, and they're like, what's this? This is just a recount of what the computer said. This is not a ballot image manual recount. And we're the first candidate in the state to challenge this legally. Okay, we'll get to that. Okay, so I want to tell you there's 3 records, God bless the legislature, of what we're supposed to have as backup records to say what the computer said we voted. Okay, there's 3 things. The first thing is, in the election code, it says you have to have result tabulation. You have to add up all those memory cards with a main computer. That's in the code. Also says that you have to have precinct returns. How many in here have been election judges? Oh, I love it, okay? So a precinct return is a definition of what the results that each candidate received. And in electronic voting, it's a tape. Okay, it's called a results tape. The third thing that's required is a ballot image. And this is in 3 different places in the election code. It says that you have to have ballot image storage. What's a ballot? Serial number, boxes, instructions, name and date of the election. That's what a ballot is by law. You can recount images of ballots cast. And actually, the Texas Administrative Code says they have to certify this equipment to do a ballot image system. Okay? 3 places of the law. What's interesting, no equipment in the state can keep a ballot image. And in our case, in Travis County, the county election judges were told not to print the tapes. So 2 of the 3 records are missing in our election, and it's going on all over the state of Texas, and I'll get to that. So let's talk about these precinct returns. There's a lot of focus on this regarding these precinct returns. You've got Chapter 66 of the Election Code in 2 places. Envelope number 1, it must contain the original election returns for the precinct. Envelope number 3, copy of the precinct returns. The results and tally tapes have to be signed by judges, and it's a failure. If you don't return those things, judges, it's a misdemeanor. That's interesting. This is what the tapes look like for people who haven't been judges. It's a thermal tape with all the candidates' names, and you retain those. And this is an example of a results tape in Travis County back in 2012. This was when Cruz was running against Dewhurst. And in my little precinct, my liberal precinct, you have 29, I think 20 or 29 votes for Cruz and 14 for Dewhurst in the primary. Every candidate has their result. Travis County, let me back up. This is also an election handbook for judges for 2016 from the Secretary of State's office. What's interesting is that it shows for polling places that use DREs, it's a direct recording electronic voting machine, which is the E-slates. You have to have certain things in these envelopes. Envelope number 1, looky there, Secretary of State quotes Chapter 66, has to have the precinct return. Envelope 2, precinct return, results tapes, and 3, also results tapes. So you have the law saying it, and the Secretary of State saying Chapter 66 requires tapes for the judges. In Travis County, the judges were told not to print the tapes in our election. And it's going on all over the state. The reason they told them not to print this is because Travis County uses vote centers. Everybody heard what vote centers are? A vote center is where you can vote anywhere in your county at any precinct. And so it just takes too long to print that tape. Don't worry, don't print it. It's not a big deal. Really? It's the law. And it's a misdemeanor for judges not to return it. So that record is missing in our election. So here's a letter from the Secretary of State. And you can't really see it very well right here, but it says they're giving a waiver to counties, to Travis County, not to print the tape. The Secretary of State is giving a waiver to law. I didn't know they could do that. Okay? So, counties are being directed not to print these tapes, these backup records to the electronic voting machine. Again, these backup records are the checks and balance. If we don't have checks and balances in our elections, what do we have? We were supposed to trust a computer? No, I don't think so. So we asked our county clerk, why did you not print these tapes? And she says, well, I don't have to because the Secretary of State's telling me I don't need to do it. And we said, well, what's the final law? And our Secretary of State, Dana Debevois, our Travis County clerk, said there's additional instructions from the Secretary of State's office that says we don't follow that law. We do something else. My lawyer's like, what? You don't follow, the Secretary of State can tell you not to follow law? And he asked her, do you think the Secretary of State can tell you not to follow state law? And she said, I know they can. It's a little surprising. A little surprising that the Secretary of State's telling counties not to follow law in our elections. Okay, let's talk about this ballot image issue. This is a big deal. Candidates have known this for over 10 years, that a real ballot image is not produced in a recount. This is the code, Election Code Chapter 128. This law came into place in 1997. What was going on in 1997? Netscape was an internet provider. Everybody remember Netscape? Back then, we didn't trust computers. You know, not like today where we're kind of jaded. So the legislature wanted some checks and balances. And actually, there was a report out by the Federal Election Commission from 1990 that gave rules on these electronic voting machines. And it said, and the legislature copied this, and said you have to have a main computer for ballot presentation. Well, you see that when you vote. You see the boxes and the candidates' names. You've got to see the ballot. Vote selection, that's the little wheel. Okay, we got that. Ballot image storage and result tabulation. What's a ballot? Serial number, boxes, name and date of the election, all the candidates' names. That's what a ballot is. Ballot image. What's an image? A picture. JPEG, PDF, bitmap. We know what pictures are. I get them from my grandbaby all the time on the computer. So I know what an image and what a picture looks like, what a JPEG looks like. And result tabulation. From a computer science standpoint, this thing is very particular. And I want to kind of go through the details. Image files are used for viewing. Okay? A data structure file, anybody here like computer science or computer technology? Okay, good job. Data structures are used for tabulation. Okay, I see you shaking your head. They're two different things. And the legislature wanted both, an image and result tabulation. These are two different methods. Okay? So, also, the legislature wanted in the recounts to be able to count images of ballots cast. That's how you count in a recount. Okay? So this is what Travis County produced instead of a ballot image. It's called a cast vote record. They printed this one per page for the 4,000 votes that were cast electronically in my election. And I'm going to expand this. This is what the Secretary of State says is a ballot image. Do you see a serial number on that piece of paper? Do you even see the date of the election on that piece of paper? I was in the election. I was a candidate, but my name's not even on it. It's not a ballot. It's not an image of a ballot. It's not even an image file. It's a data structure file printed one per page to a template. This is what's being produced across the state of Texas when candidates want to do a recount, and they know you can't do a real recount. This is a printout from that data structure of what the computer said we voted. It's not a separate file. No serial number, no date of the election. I don't even know where this piece of paper came from. I have no idea. It's not traceable. It's not trackable. It's not auditable. What's interesting is candidates have known this for 10 years and no one's filed a lawsuit. When we did the recount and we didn't get the records, there's no tape, there's no ballot image, there's only what the computer said we voted. We said, this is not legal, we're filing an election contest, and we're the first in the state to do it. This is a letter from the Secretary of State where he says that ballot images remain on the voting machines. Well, where are they? Where are they? That cast vote record is not a ballot image. The Travis County website says it captures an image of each ballot cast. Well, I don't see it. They said they couldn't produce it. When in our court case, we asked them to produce the manuals for the equipment, they said, well, we don't have manuals for them. We're like, well, the manuals would show where the ballot image is being stored, and we are demanding those in our lawsuit. We want the ballot images. The equipment says it can do it. And they're like, well, we don't have the manuals. I said, well, maybe if you had the manuals, you could print the ballot image. And the judge never would allow us to get to the manual. I have 4 patents, and so I looked up the Hart InterCivic patents, and it says it can print and store a ballot image. This patent is from 2006, and it says it stores an exact replica of the vote. It says an exact copy of the cast ballot image is moved to the memory. Even the patents say it can do it. Where is it? Is Hart InterCivic in some sort of breach of contract with the state of Texas and it cannot produce a ballot image? That would be news. Candidates cannot do a real recount. This is part of the administrative code that directs the Secretary of State's office. When you're certifying the system, it has to have electronic ballot image systems for recounts. Even the administrative code documents this. So where is it? We could never get them. And according to the Secretary of State, no electronic voting system in the state can produce a ballot that meets the legal definition of a ballot. Okay. Outside of the law and the legal issues, we did a lot of work in our lawsuit to get records that the county did have. And a couple of these things we had before we even filed our lawsuit. In campaigns, everybody knows you get lists of people who early voted, right? We take those people off our rolls. We don't block walk them. If you've already voted, we don't block walk you. We don't phone bank. We leave you alone, and we go talk to those voters who need to be talked to. And so we had lists of people who had early voted in our election. What we noticed was, reviewing the list of the names with the number of ballots that were cast in early voting, almost every precinct had more ballots cast than voters' names who had voted. I know math, that doesn't work. That was the first thing we noticed, okay? The second, and I'll show you that. The second thing we got in discovery of our lawsuit, the mobile ballot box memory cards were corrupted on election night 9 times. So the cards that actually have the votes on them were corrupted. And I'll show you that. We got that, and that's the first time anybody in the state's ever gotten that data. There were security breaches of the electronic voting systems. You judges, you know you have the security seals on the equipment. Well, those security seals were broken and replaced on many sets of the equipment. There were extended logons on main computers. You know how your computer logs off after about 15 minutes? In the county, Travis County, their computers were logged on for 10 days straight with no log out. 24 hours a day. Anyone could have access to that. I'll show you that. We had our poll watchers on election night that were supposed to sign those results tapes, and they were obstructed from signing them because the judges didn't print them. That's a misdemeanor to block a poll watcher from what they were supposed to do. Also, we had some statistical analysis showing that the tabulation of what the main computer did was not credible. How many in here like math? Anybody? Oh, I love it. I love it. Okay, you're going to love this. So I'm going to show you some statistical analysis. And then we had an expert who did a report for us, a declaration, that said that a lot of issues, that the corrupt cards caused the results not to be credible. He said that cast vote record's not an image file, it's a data structure. It's actually 32 bytes in size when image files are thousands. So even from a computer science standpoint, that cast vote record's not an image file. Okay, so we had that. So we'll go through each one of these. This is my favorite one. This was the first one I noticed. So here's my precincts. You know, this is a little city council race in Austin, Texas, only 18 precincts. And these are the number of ballots that were cast. These are the number of voters' names that the county gave to us as a campaign of people who voted early. And these are the numbers of voters that were more ballots than names. And I think as an election judge, you can't be more than 2 or 3 off by law. And we have almost every single precinct was off. That said something's wrong. And that actually is a fingerprint of a hack, because the computer program isn't perfect. And it makes a mistake, and in almost every precinct. It's not just 1 or 2 precincts, okay? Now here's the math. This is my favorite part. I was in a general election, and then I was in a runoff. And so kind of bear with me on this. I was up till 2 in the morning analyzing data, and I just thought, if I'm going to steal an election, how would I do it? I'm an engineer. We all kind of think the same. We're trained very similarly. And I said, you know, I remember the 80-20 rule in engineering. Anybody ever heard the 80-20 rule? Yeah. So you focus on 80% of where the big hitters are, and you ignore the rest. So I did that. So where did 80% of my voters vote? And so these are the precincts where 80% of my voters voted. It's about half the precincts. And I looked at, and this was the unique thing I did. There were 8 candidates in the general election. Myself, my opponent, and 6 others. I just looked at my ratio and his ratio in the general election, mine and his, and then I looked at the ratio that I got of that total. It's a little bit different to do, but that's what we did. Look, these are the percents that I received in those precincts in the general. In the runoff, it was just he and I. And this is the percent that I got in the runoff. And 4,000 voters had tritted out. Everybody knows that. You lose voters in the runoff, right? What was shocking was 3 precincts I noticed stayed exactly the same percent. That's very unusual. Very, especially with 4,000 voters attriting out. Some voters coming in that hadn't voted in the general. And then I had a statistician. He said, Laura, do this. On the x-axis, plot what you got in the general, and on the y-axis, what you got in the runoff, and see if there's a correlation. And do that for other candidates who were in runoffs. This was the first time we had 10 districts in Austin for the city council. So we had a lot of runoffs going on. And this is what we found. So we plotted on the x-axis, the general, and on the y-axis, the runoff. I was in District 4. This is District 6 result. You kind of see a scatter plot. District 7, scatter plot. District 1, a scatter plot. And this one's mine. It's a straight line with an R squared of 0.98. I'll tell you what, I was an engineer for 17 years in the semiconductor industry, and I have shut down billion-dollar factories on data less correlated than that. So my engineering eye knew what this meant. This showed me there was a program on that main computer that targeted a percent, and they used the same program in the runoff that they did in the general. They didn't even change it. Maybe if they changed it, I wouldn't have caught it. This is a straight line. Very different from what you would expect in a random distribution. So, I'll tell you what. It was 2 o'clock in the morning when I saw this, and I got sick at my stomach. I felt like I had touched the devil. And I woke my husband up, and I said, do we step up and be responsible and do something about this, or do we step back and be a victim? And I decided to step up with his help. And we're the first candidate in the state that has filed a lawsuit against these electronic voting machines and what's happening. So we got one round of discovery with our judge in this election contest. And we asked for the audit logs of the voting machine. And no candidate's ever gotten this in the country, ever. Audit logs are time, date, stamp of what goes on in that computer. And they save it. It's required, actually, for them to save this. So we got the audit logs. My lawyer's like, you can get the audit logs? I'm like, yes, go get them. Go get them. Go get the audit logs. So we did that. So I want you to remember, kind of circle back to our very beginning. What happens to your vote? Your vote goes onto the memory card, and the memory card goes to one place, the main computer on election night. Okay? We got the audit log of that main computer, and I'm going to show you what we found. It was surprising. We found corruption errors on the main computer on election night, 9 times on election night. Corrupt mobile ballot boxes, corrupt memory cards. And it occurred at the very beginning when they were first putting votes in at about 12:30 around lunchtime. And every county does it different. In Austin, we start doing early voting at about noon. Corrupt mobile ballot box. And then again, it starts happening all on election night. And what's interesting, after the corrupt card gets put in, my precincts are loaded next. Corruption, my precincts. Corruption, my precincts. Corruption, my precinct. Corruption, my precincts. It wasn't even random. So look, no ballot image, no tape, and the tabulation's corrupted. That's not what the legislature intended. It did not. The reason we print the tapes, judges, is in case something happens to the equipment on the way to the county. You've got to back up. And you signed it and you authenticated it. Well, that's missing. It's gone. And there's no ballot image that's being stored. That's a different data structure than this data tabulation data structure. So we asked for one more audit log. We said we want the audit log of the computer that's programming the memory cards. Who had access to make these things corrupt? So what this corruption is saying is the computer's not handshaking. It doesn't recognize the card that is from a precinct. It doesn't know where it's from. We asked the judge, can we get to the card to see what software's on that card that caused it to be corrupt? He told us, no, you can't. We said, well, can we take the deposition of the guy putting this in 9 times on election night? He said no. So we got the audit log. Oh, let me back up. So this is kind of a sheet. These audit logs are pages and pages of data. And this is just like an eye chart of, there's 9 different errors. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 9 times on election night, corruption errors. Our computer expert, who was our witness, our expert witness, he reviewed a ton of reports about Hart InterCivic. There was this key report in 2007 that he reviewed. It was commissioned by the Secretary of State of California, and there was a Rice University professor on it and a Stanford University professor, and what they found was this corruption error is a known hack scenario. It was defined by that report in 2007, over 8 years ago, and our expert quoted the report. An adversary may introduce corrupt mobile ballot boxes into the legitimate flow of mobile ballot boxes from the precincts back to the election central, and this could damage the credibility of the vote counting process. And look at this. corrupt mobile ballot boxes in the flow of normal ballot boxes at the central count. What we think is there was a program on this card, and it had to keep getting put in over and over. That straight line that showed there was a program, we think that's where this was. But the judge wouldn't let us get to the card. It's a known hack scenario, known for 8 years. We asked for one more audit log. We wanted to know where these cards are being programmed. We got that one. And here you see the same mobile ballot box that was corrupt on the previous page was logged in on 11/21, and look at there, not logged out till 10 days later. Who had access to that card for 10 days? Was it really on the computer loaded for 10 days, or had it been removed? Were there entries missing in between here? Either one of those is not good. Again, another corruption error, same card. 12/1, logged out on 12/10. That's early voting. 9 days, logged in straight. That's a security breach. Who had access to this? So we asked the judge, we want to know who had access. And he says, you cannot get that evidence, Dr. Pressley. And by the way, you have no evidence, and we're issuing a no evidence summary judgment. Out of all the stuff I just showed you, the judge said we had no evidence. We respectfully disagree. I'm very grateful to the judge for letting us get one round of discovery. Not only did he rule against us in a no evidence summary judgment, we were told this was a frivolous lawsuit, and we were sanctioned $40,000. And in the courtroom, it was said this sanction was so strong that they wanted to chill any other candidate from ever bringing another lawsuit on this electronic voting machine ever again in Texas. And there was a deal on the table from the opponent that they would not pursue the sanctions if we would not appeal. We said, we're appealing. We're moving forward. Someone's got to do this. Someone has to do it. Candidates have known it. We don't have the backup records that the legislature intended, and the Secretary of State is allowing that to occur. Okay, so we're filing. We moved forward with the appeal, and I'll get to kind of where we are with that. So let's kind of recap here. There's 3 records that have to be retained for an election. Ballot images, well, we don't have that. Precinct returns, we don't have that. And the result is corrupted. Our case is, the result can't be known. I lost by 1,300, supposedly 1,300 votes. I don't know how much I lost by, because 4,000 ballot images are missing, and I don't know where they are. And the paper ballots are tied exactly, 50-50, so we can't know who won. That's the basis of our lawsuit. So let's kind of big picture this. Is this going on all over the state? Well, we know there's no ballot image, right? Okay, let's just take that one off the table. What about these tapes? There's 2 kinds of ways we vote in Texas. One is precinct voting, and one is county-wide voting, where you can vote anywhere. And supposedly it takes too long to print those tapes for county-wide, because it's just anybody can vote. All the precincts have to be printed out. It takes too long. Well, I don't care if it takes too long. It's the law. But this is what's going on. So you have counties that are precinct voting and counties that are county-wide. Some precincts are printing tapes. Some precincts are not printing tapes. And Parker County is one of them. You're not printing your tapes. Countywide, you have printing tapes. And countywide, you have people not printing tapes. You have every permutation possible in the state of Texas. Where's the consistency? Where's the checks and balances? And this is during election day. Okay? Remember, the judge's handbook says to print them. Go back. We're not printing them. That's a violation of law. Even the Secretary of State says they reference Chapter 66 to print the tapes. I don't know that they understood the consequence of this by not printing them. When you have challenges, elections, I'm in a $160,000 lawsuit. I wished I had the tapes. Sure would be nice. A lot cheaper. Let's look at early voting. Early voting is very interesting. You have precinct voting and countywide. These are the counties not printing tapes during early voting. Some do, some don't. Again, every permutation possible. Where's the consistency? Where's the backup record? Where's the checks and balance for our election? Are our elections not the most important thing we have? Because if we don't have fair and auditable elections, what do we have? I would conjecture that everything's a root cause of a problem of the election system. Root cause. I'm an engineer. If you don't have fair elections and honest elections, that's the root cause of the stuff we're dealing with today. What we've been talking about is electronic voting and how the Secretary of State's giving waivers for counties not to print those tapes. And he has said that cast vote record is the ballot image. Well, we're challenging that in the court system. We don't agree with that. I can read what the statutes say about what the laws are. Let's consider paper ballots. Every county does absentee paper ballots, and you have some counties in Texas still doing paper ballots. A lot of them, actually. But you know what? They're counted by a computer. But you have that backup record for the paper that you can audit. In the state statute, for counties that do paper ballots and for the absentee ballots, they are to do 3 precincts at minimal of an audit, hand-counted paper ballot audit. Well, Mr. Ingram of the Secretary of State for this primary, he waived every 254 counties in the state of Texas to not do the audit of the paper ballots. Every single county in the state not doing the paper ballot audit of 3 precincts. I call Keith, and I said, "Hey, Keith, it's Laura Pressley. How you doing?" He says, "Fabulous." I said, I saw that you gave a waiver to all the counties to not do the paper ballot audits. I said, "Why'd you do that?" He said, "Because that's what we do." I said, "But wait a minute." I said, "All counties?" I said, "The statute says you can waive a particular political subdivision, which is a county. It doesn't say you can give a waiver in one email." Look at this. This is county clerks, election administrator, and county chairs got this email all across the state of Texas. One big waiver. I said, "Why'd you do this for every county?" He goes, "That's what we do." It was like I was a 4-year-old and my mom was saying, "Because I said so." Yeah. He had no reason. I spoke to him myself. Okay, there's no tape, there's no ballot image, and now for paper ballot, no audit anywhere in the state. Is that the system that we signed up for? How many here are veterans? Anybody here a veteran? Is this what you signed up for? No. No. Okay. I get pretty passionate about this stuff. Let's kind of take a big picture view of voting in Texas. There's 3 times we can vote. You can vote on a paper ballot, absentee. Some counties do paper. You can vote early, and you can vote on election day. And let's look at the election records and where is your vote most secure? Let's think about this. So paper ballot. The computer tabulates it, but you know what? You got a paper ballot to go back to. Even if the county doesn't do an audit, as candidates, we can do that. We can do a recount, and that's what I did. Early voting, the computer tabulates. Well, there's no image, and there's no tape during early. Look at there. Election day, computer tabulates. Well, there's no image. Sometimes we have a tape. Where is your vote most secure? When's it least secure? And when are we told to vote? Early. Early voting is a big issue. Corruption can hide easily in complexity. The more complex a voting system is, the more corruption. We've shown you one way that votes can be stolen. There's hundreds of ways. We've shown you just one. I call it fraud of choice. Because from a computer technology standpoint, you can steal a vote in lots of ways. You don't have to just do it with one that I've shown you. I've shown you kind of the efficient way they're doing it, the way I believe it's being done. So what do we do going forward? If we don't have fair elections, what do we have? Do we have anything in this country? I'll tell you, there's a woman in the Northeast Tarrant County Tea Party. She's about 90 years old. She came up to me and she said, Dr. Pressley, the Lord told me not to vote early. I said, well, my dear, he was right. I'll never vote early. And I'm doing everything I can to get these tapes printed. And I'm going to tell you what happened in Parker County this time. You guys, your election judges were told not to print the tapes. Is this okay to say? Okay. Because it takes too long to print it, right? That's the good reason. Well, there's a quote by Thomas Edison, and he says there's two reasons people do things, the good reason and the real reason. So the good reason is don't print it because it takes too long. Well, we have a guy here, a courageous man, Mike, that he was election judge, and he printed the tape. How long did it take? 25 minutes. 25 minutes. 2.5 rolls of tape. For the most important thing we do in this country, which is vote. There's nothing more sacred and more pure, and it has to be the truth than that. So Parker County, I want you guys to call your election administrator tomorrow, and you say, I want the tapes printed in the runoff. And I don't care if it takes 25 minutes to do it. We have to have those tapes to make sure that the tape result matches what the main computer said. And we had guys here who were poll watchers at the main computer here in Parker County, and there really was no corruption error that y'all saw, correct? Right. Rick Perry did it, and who was the other guy that did it? Yes, sir. So y'all, bless you for what you did. I wish I had someone at the main computer on election night on my election, but who knew that you could have a poll watcher at the main computer? You can. A poll watcher, by law, can monitor any activity associated with an election. And this last primary, we had poll watchers across the state, and I think 13 or 15 counties watching that main computer. Never been done before, we did it. And it was really interesting. Travis County, more corruption errors. Llano County, corruption errors. Dallas County, they wouldn't let them in the computer room. Wouldn't let them in. Fought them, wouldn't let them in. They got the Secretary of State's Elections Division lawyer on the phone, and the lawyer said they can't be at the main computer. They told them they cannot be there. Are you kidding me? I've got them in 15 counties right now, and Dallas won't let them in. We have a problem, guys, with our Secretary of State. Waivers for electronic, waivers for paper, poll watching, limiting that. Ballot images, are you kidding me? We have an issue in the Secretary of State's office. But we can handle this locally, and you call your administrator tomorrow and say, I want those tapes printed. It's the law. And by the way, why can't you produce a ballot image? That's a longer issue. Okay, so what we're doing with this appeals court is really amazing. It's an election contest. Only candidates can bring these type of lawsuits and get this type of data. The audit logs are really, you can't get them without a lawsuit. So we're the first candidate in the state, and we are up to $160,000 right now. And it'd been a lot cheaper to have those tapes, I'll tell you that. And to have the ballot image. We wouldn't be here. We've raised about $80,000 with donations, and my husband and I have put in $80,000 of our own savings into this because we believe it. If we don't have this, we don't have anything. And I know of multiple candidates this last primary who could have challenged their elections. There were problems. We found them. We knew them. We witnessed them. And they wouldn't do it. They wouldn't do it. They were worried about being called sore losers and being looking bad in the press or whatever. And so I'm not worried about that. You've got to do the right thing. That's how I was raised. So I'm here for two reasons: to educate everyone across the state about what's going on, what the Secretary of State's doing. That office is supposed to be upholding the laws and making everything consistent across the state. And what you've seen is anything less than consistent. That's the first reason I'm here, and get you riled up and calling your election administrator and making sure they're doing the right thing. The second thing is I need your help. We are in this appeal. It's very expensive, and I cannot do this by myself. And I'm so grateful. There's several in here who have donated to our campaign, and I'm just to this effort, and I just bless you for that because we need it. We just got word on Friday in a little inside baseball about the appeals issue, our case. We've had 2 requests of the court. We've asked them to expand our words for our briefs because this is a very complex topic. A lot of computer stuff, a lot of evidence, a lot of data. We asked the court to expand the word limit in our second brief, and our opponent fought it and said, no, do not let them have the words. The court gave it to us. We did. I was really grateful for that. We also had initially asked for an oral argument, and our opponent vehemently said, no oral argument. This is not needed. This is a simple case, no oral argument. Well, we looked at that, and with the extended words that we got, we're like, you know what? We got everything we wanted in the brief. We're good, and it's expensive to do that oral argument. So we're going to withdraw our request for oral argument. On Friday, the court demanded oral argument. Yeah. So the 2 things our opponents asked them to do, they went against it, which is good for us. So we're happy about that. But the oral argument's expensive, and we don't have the funds for it. So I'm here asking for your help. We can't do this alone. And this is not just about Little Travis County. It's not. We have other candidates dealing with this that won't do it. And we need your help to make